I moved to the UK as a medical doctor. I studied in Nigeria, graduated from one of the universities in Nigeria, the first and the best, University of Ibadan, and I currently work in the UK as a medical doctor. Now, a lot of people come into my DMs occasionally to ask me what influenced my decision to move to the UK as an international medical graduate over maybe the US, for example, saying as a lot of people from Nigeria, India, Pakistan would typically choose the UK or the US. And even more recently, people are choosing places like Australia. So, in this video, I'm going to be sharing some of the reasons that influenced my decision to move to the UK. Now, if that sounds like something that you want to watch, then stick around. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And without further ado, let's jump right into the video. First and most obvious reason is the cost. Moving to the UK at the time was the cheapest option for us. Because I was earning in Naira, my husband was earning in Naira, the conversion rate from Naira to pounds was, you need a lot of Naira to convert to pounds. And you need a lot of Naira to convert to US dollars. And for us, it was just cheaper to convert to pounds because the exams were just two steps, PLAB 1 and PLAB 2. And if you were successful, then you could find a job and then you could move and start. So I've got videos on my channel talking about how much the entire process cost me back in 2021 when I did it. So if you want to watch that, it's going to be somewhere up in the cards so you can check it out. But again, the cost was just the cheapest. Moving to the US was so much more expensive because you needed to do USMLE step 1, step 2, step 3, and even then marching was so expensive as well because you had to pay to apply to different places to march. It was just a lot more expensive to do that in the US versus coming to the UK to do it. Apart from the cost, the next thing was just proximity. So America is so much farther from Nigeria than the UK, for example. At least if I'm going to go to America, I'm going to be spending minimum of 13 to 15 hours on flying versus the UK, which is just 6 hours away from Nigeria. And because I knew that we're going to start a family and a life abroad, you would need like some form of support system. We felt that the UK was a better choice for us because our family members could easily come visit us. Our children could easily go back home. They could have a relationship with their grandparents, their uncles, aunties. And, it was just a better situation for our family members. Also, because of community, we had a more decent number of people living in the UK versus America. And because America is so big, even if you and a family member are living in the same state, you may still be 4 or 5 hours apart, still within the same state. But in the UK, we've got family members very, around us that are just about an hour and a half away. So obviously, my children could grow up with their children, knowing their cousins, knowing their family members, and they could just grow up not in isolation, which was really, really important to me and my husband. And that was another reason why we decided to choose the UK over the US. Regarding career, in the US, you can't practice if you're not in training, meaning that if for whatever reason you weren't successful with marching this particular year, you can't practice as a medical officer. You would literally just be floating, trying to do everything else that is not practicing medicine while you wait for the next year because you can only march once a year. So if you didn't march this time, you have to wait for next time. And honestly, that was, a bit scary for me because a few reasons. First of all, I didn't really even know what specialty I wanted to go into. Second thing is, I've got family, I've got a husband, I've got children, I've got bills to pay. I can't really afford to be floating. So if I'm not successful with marching for any reason, I still need to be able to pay my bills. I still need um to earn a living. And that wouldn't have really been possible if I was in the US and if I didn't march. I would have just had to be floating. I would have had to go do a master's degree or work as a research assistant or something that is not medical related. And honestly, I didn't think that that was the best decision for us at the time. Another reason was also because um, the work-life balance in the UK versus the US is so much better. For example, with the European Working Directive, I think that's what it's called in the UK, you can work maximum of 48 hours a week. And if you're going to work more than 48 hours a week, then it would have to be, paid at a premium. But in the US, people are working 96 hours. People are working, crazy hours a week. And that means that they wouldn't have time for anything else except work. And that's not really my vibe because I love to do things like this. I love making videos on YouTube. I love making videos on Instagram. I love traveling. I love, taking life a bit slower. And that just seemed a bit too intense for me. So I really wasn't so motivated to do that. That was another big reason why I just decided to come to the UK because I genuinely loved the work-life balance. I loved the fact that if I was sick, nobody was going to guilt trip me for falling sick, and nobody was going to say, how can you fall sick? We need you as a team, this, that, and that. Like, you can actually be sick and you can take time off if you're sick. Like my maternity leave, for example, that type of policy is non-existent in the US. Like the way I was able to take a prolonged maternity leave, I wouldn't have been able to do that in the US because it's just not possible, And these are the things that I thought about with the work-life balance, being present as a parent for my children, as well as being a professional at work. And I just felt like the UK offered me a better blend and a better mix of my life as a doctor versus my life as a wife and a mother. Also, with the UK, there are other opportunities to earn some more money outside your regular contracted hours. As I said, you can work a maximum of 48 hours, but most people don't even get up to 48 hours. Like I work in A&E and A&E is very busy, but I work about 44 hours a week. So because of this regulation with like the maximum number of hours that you can work, there are gaps in the rota sometimes. So when someone falls in sick, that's a gap in the rota. When people go on annual leave, that's a gap in the rota. When people go on maternity leave, that's a gap in the rota. And because of that, there are opportunities for you to do locum shifts. And these locum shifts would pay you some money. So there is an opportunity for you to make money outside your contracted hours, which is non-existent in the UK, in the US, because you will simply be stretched to fill out all those gaps in the rota, or you simply just don't have those gaps in the rota in the US. And that leads to more burnout in the US versus here in the UK. You can make a bit more money from the locum and you can use that money towards anything you like, buying a property, traveling, whatever the case may be. That is something that I really appreciate about the UK. With regards to training as well, because the USMLE, I think, is an exam that's a lot more mentally intensive than the PLAB exam, for example, or even the college exams, like the membership exams for whatever college you're trying to get into. I think that the USMLE is just a lot more voluminous and there's a lot more depth for you to cover when you're trying to pass the USMLE. So I didn't feel like I really wanted to do that. So I just chose the PLAB exams. Also because getting into specialty is also significantly more competitive in the US versus getting to specialty training in the UK. There's no real preference for like British people in the UK or people who studied in the UK. There's no real preference. It's just based off of merit. But in the US, there's a lot of layers that you have to go through. Are you American? Did you study in America? All those type of things. And then if they've gone through all those layers and they don't find someone, then maybe you can get it. So it just makes the competition a lot more steep. And finally, I love the fact that, and this ties really back down to the work-life balance, because the UK is in Europe and Europe is so interconnected. You can travel the world very easily for very cheap, and you can literally just go to a lot of countries. You can go around like Europe if you desire, come back down to Africa, go to like Morocco, Egypt is so close. Go to Spain, France. France from London is just about 2 hours via train. Like you can literally globe trot, and it is affordable, it is cheap, it is accessible. And these were the things that I just like looked at when I was considering the US versus the UK. Now, don't get me started. I'm not saying that UK is perfect. It has its own drawbacks. For example, the earning potential is a lot lower in the UK versus the US. When um, people graduate from their specialty training in the US and they've become maybe cardiologists, for example, they earn up to 3-4 times more than what a British a British cardiologist, for example, would earn. So, I mean, it does balance out eventually. Also, for example, as apart from like the earning potential, the training is also significantly longer in the UK because of this work-life balance that we've spoken about. So, specialty training in the US is about 3 years for most specialties, but in the UK, it is about 5-6 years for most specialties. So almost double the time as well, only for you to graduate and not make as much money as you would have made in the US. But at the end of the day, I guess it really just depends on the game that you're trying to play and what you think works best for you. What some people have been able to do is, especially when they've worked and they've collected a certificate from trainings like general practice or psychiatry, is they move to Canada because they are needed in Canada and then they can make that money in Canada. So I've got colleagues who moved to Canada, Australia, and even the United Arab Emirates, because those places actually need doctors who have CTT'd in the UK, and they can actually pay you what you're worth if you feel like you don't want to, settle for less with regards to your earning potential in the UK. So there are definitely ways to maneuver this, and at the end of the day, it just depends on, are you willing to, do the whole psychological thing of uprooting your life again and moving it to somewhere completely different? Are you willing to uproot your children's lives? They've already started making friends. You just uproot it and move them to the United Arab Emirates, where they don't speak English as a primary language, or Australia, which is so far away, or Canada, whatever. Really, there's no right or wrong answer. It just depends on whatever your circumstance is and what you think works best for you. But these are the reasons that I chose to move to the UK. Oh, and I forgot to mention also the process of naturalization. For the UK, especially when you come on a skilled workers visa, the process of naturalization is 5 years of working on this visa. Then you can apply for settled status, which is called indefinite leave to remain. And after you've lived in the country for 12 consecutive months, once you've gotten settled status, then you can now apply for British citizenship, which I thought was very nice because that type of arrangement is not in America. So yeah, those were the primary reasons that I chose to move to the UK as an international medical graduate over the United States of America. I hope that you found this video helpful, informative, and, it has told you the pros and the cons of everything. But yeah, it really is a personal decision, and it just depends on what you like and what your goals are for yourself and your future. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really do hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.